As always, our main reference for this lecture is c#speedrun.com. You will find all the code snippets we have covered in this lecture. It covers other topics such as design patterns, loops, object-oriented, and so on. We highly recommend the site for C# developers. Stack, and then we put in our data type, so string and my codes equal new stack string. We put our semicolon. So to add elements, we just need to type mycards.push, just like we have seen over here. mycards.push push. So let's type in 8 hearts, and then we're gonna duplicate these lines a few times, and then jack of clubs, so jack clubs, and then queen of spades, queen spades. So let's read these elements. So just like the other collection, we can use the for each loop, for each tab, and then we'll loop our my cards collection. So cw tab to generate our code snippet, and then we'll just display the value. So let's test our code, and voila, we have all the elements inside our stack. We have the queen of spades, the jack clubs, and 8 hearts. Note that for reference data type, we can add null inside our stack and the compiler will run the program just fine. So here you see it is empty. Let's comment this out, Ctrl+Shift/. It is possible to create a stack from an array. Let's create the array. My 5 numbers, new int, and then we'll input some random values over here and our semicolon. We will create a stack of integers, int and my numbers equal new stack of type in, and then we'll put in our rounded bracket, and in here we will type our array because we're trying to we'll use the for each loop to output all the elements in our stack. So we have created an array, and then we will insert all the elements inside the array inside our stack collection class, and then we will output all the content in our stack. So let's see how that works. And just as expected, we have all the elements from the array has successfully been input inside our stack. So good job if you have been following along and coding with me. So let's randomize these numbers, 7, 84, 53, and 61. So let's say we want to get the last element from our stack. We can use the pop method. It will return the last element and remove it from our stack collection. So let's comment these lines of code, Ctrl+Shift/, and then we'll type another write line statement. Let's rename this one, so my lucky numbers. So my lucky numbers dot, so here the ID will display all the methods available to us. In here we will use the pop method. This should output the last element, which is 62. So let's test it out and see the results. All right, indeed we have output the last element inside our stack. So let's clear up these lines of code, this one too. So notice that if our array is empty and there isn't any elements inside our stack, and we try to pop a value, the compiler will throw an exception saying stack is empty. It is good practice to always check the number of elements inside our stack before we try to use the pop method. Let's see how we can do that. Let's stop the execution of our program. So we'll use a simple if statement. If my 5 numbers, if we type dot, we will have access to the length property. So we will check if the length is greater than 0, and then we will pop display the value. So Control KD to format our code, and let's clean that up a little bit. Control KD. If our stack is not empty, or in other words, the length is greater than 0, that is, it is 1, 2 or more, and then we will pop and display our element. Let's see how that works. So see, you didn't get any exception. It will only execute that if we have values inside our stack. Since our array is empty, we didn't initialize the stack with any value, so it is empty. So our array is empty, our stack is empty. It didn't execute this line of code. That's why we didn't get an error. Let's input some values. Now if we execute, we should print the number 7. So remember, I've said the pop method will actually remove the last element. If we print all the elements inside our stack, over here, CW, let's print all the elements inside item, and then we'll print an empty line. So CW tab over here, and we'll print it again after we pop the value, after pop, and then we'll print our stack again so that we can see the difference after we pop it. Let's now print. Previously we had 4 values. We popped the latest one, which is 7. Now we have only 3 values inside our stack. Let's say we just want to read the latest value without removing it from our stack. The peek method is available for us. So let's type in dot, and then you will see the peek method. Let's type in the peek method. So now if we try to peek the latest method, you will notice it didn't remove it from our stack. Alright, so we had 4 value, we peek the latest value, and then we still have 4 values inside our stack. So the peek method will not remove the element, it will just return it, whereas the pop method will remove the element from our stack. Another useful method is the contains method. So whenever we need to check whether an element exists in the stack collection or not, we can use the contains method. So it returns true if it exists, otherwise it returns false. So let's see how that works. So let's remove all of these elements. So CW tab, and then my lucky numbers dot contains. So let's test if the number 12 exists, and then we'll duplicate these statements and check for the number 120. We will test the number 12. So let's test our application. All right, so we have 12 indeed exists in our stack, whereas 120 doesn't exist, so it returns false, and 12 again, it exists. It just checks if the methods exist, it doesn't remove it from our stack. All right, so that's it for this video. Let's recap. So we can use the contains method to check whether an element exists or not. It will return true or false. We can use the peek method, which will return the latest value of our stack. In this case, it will return 7. It will not remove the element from our stack, whereas the pop method will return the last element, and it will also remove it from our stack. And it is good practice to check for the number of elements before we try to pop or peek, or the compiler will throw an error if our stack is empty. Another point to remember is that we can use an array to fill our stack, and we can add null values inside our stack as long as it is for reference types. The stack collection class comes from the system.collection.generic namespace. So we have a non-generic and generic version of our stack. We usually prefer to use the generic version for its performance because it doesn't perform any boxing or unboxing because it is obviously generic type. So the stack collection is similar to a stack of cards. We add one element on top of each other, and the last item added to the stack will be the first item to be removed from it. For additional lectures, check out our Udemy courses. The link is in the description box below. Please like, share, and subscribe for more content. See you guys later. Goodbye.